shimase, mahambase, niyaras. That's in the long song carrying the chindino. The mahambate, Kechimoshiwaris. The reason on the mahambate, Yapoyama, or Titan on Yonecha, and the Kechimoshin Sate, Sate, she said to Slagesa.
Okay. So, we as beings, we basically can look at our existence in two ways. You can look at it in terms of this life, right, this present life, or we can look at it in terms of our future lives. And of the two, I mean, we have to be aware of both, but of the two, the future lives, our future lives are the more important to be aware of. So, Geshe wants to sort of make that point.
Oh, to since I don't know. Oh, Tanadi weekend. Tangane, oh, weekend. Yapuji. Mongol Mason, Talon, Yapuji, and the Aris, the Ninsa. Oh, Tangando, Yapuyan, Munchin, Monecha, the Jiddle, Tate. Oh, the Ninsa, Tating on the Tomen, the Let's I see any the Nyan Tomen on the say, oh, Timon, that's Sazokin, Yapunia, the kitchen race.
So, being aware of this, then we need to be kind of aware of what's going to affect our future lives, which is our actions now, right? So being aware of our future lives, we need to kind of become aware of our actions now and be careful with our actions now.
Oh, the names are Tanganzo, Tandan, Shishia, and no Chichi. The names are that it's John or General. She said, Tanang on the Jandon there was Shanduin there. Or Tanon Chi Chignole, Jandote, Samba, Jandote, Monchi Tenda, which on the Shando Yevi, only Gawacon, Shawate, Mimo Gawacon, Shawate, Shando Jitin Yevi, Mimo Gawacon, Shawate, only Monchindo, yes. The Shetoneta, oh, Jimbado, that. Zavado, Santando, Nochi Maimbala, Somali, Jimbala, Yerite, that Nochi, Missy Chade, so Jandoji Deva, Titi, and Nona Conchia, Nochi Changa.
So, we're talking here, obviously, at least a couple of us here are probably Buddhists, right, or would consider themselves Buddhists. So, but we've got to look at, well, what is it that makes somebody a Buddhist or makes somebody a Buddhist practice? Well, one of the things that we do here is we do this practice of taking refuge, right? Now, this we can say is kind of a Buddhist practice because it involves taking refuge in Buddhist holy objects. So through this practice, you create virtue with your body, speech, and mind, and you do positive actions of body, speech, and mind by taking refuge, and therefore you create virtue or positive kind of karma. But, however, the distinction is there's activities such as generosity, for example, but you can't say generosity is something specifically Buddhist. Obviously, other traditions and just ordinary people have this practice. But the practice of refuge is something that makes something a Buddhist practice because it's involved with something, because it's involved with the Buddhist holy object.
That no chicha, Jandoji Ten Yavitin, Nonecha, Nochi Chaw. Emma the young and the Nomba in Nombe debt in the low is enough. Conochi Chaw to Jandoji Ten Yavitin, and Diasiano, Gariciano, Conochi Chaw. Jandol Tine, or Donona Jumachi. Ah, no chickbo, de Momolona, Nomba in Latayama.
So, as we've said before, this refuge is the practice that actually defines somebody as a Buddhist or not, whether you have this refuge, right? It's not determined by anything else. You can do meditation, you can study, you can be a complete scholar on, having read books and have a deep understanding of the Buddhist teachings. However, if you don't have this faith, this refuge in your mind stream, then you can't actually say that you're a Buddhist. So this is what determines whether one is a Buddhist or not.
I want to catch up. I know Chinyon and Devon or what Cario Sena. And then Devon, oh, Nento Lado made there's on Taji or Shio Chunka. 아니 링가스 데레체 때는 대화 타와타 아니 대 타와에 간 제가 만티 요네 세시는 야보지나 산지지 공부타 타와라나 도시에는 섬이할 때 노지 몽골아 때 노지 요네체 타 레번다고 때 두스레사 년도도 타와도 년에 섬이하래사 통지 산지 공
But within Buddhism, there can be said to be three main types of divisions of practitioners, right? We have what is called the small, medium, and great scope practitioner. And what the difference between is, the first one is primarily concerned with the results of their future lives, right? So their aim is to have a positive rebirth in their future life. The medium scope practitioner is concerned with attaining liberation from samsara. And then the great scope practitioner uses this altruistic action and attitude or intention of bodhicitta, the wish to benefit all sentient beings, and therefore attain the result of enlightenment, full enlightenment, to be able to do that. So this is the differentiation between the three scopes of Buddhist practitioners. Can everybody hear all right? It's all good?
Okay, today, that son, Lazarva, Devon, Toyason. Then the town, the listen under the pencil. Then in the town, Niento, Xiaoshima, the Lado May, Dezon, Potar, Xiuchun. That Niento Lado May, Dezon Toya, Jetel, Tanango Carrido de Sena. That Magichi, Magichi body. 상황에 먹겠지는 다 내가 레레나 본 먹겠지 보고 선대야 보이소나 아니 내래 년도 사도 매 대송 다 대리했어 두스리했어 먹겠지 야 뭐시와지 대 가서 손타나 아니 년도 사도 매 대송 다 지다라고 그랬어
So these small scope practitioner, what is their primary practice? So the primary practice is abandoning this practice of ethical discipline through abandoning the 10 non-virtues. And through the abandonment of the 10 non-virtues, they create the positive karma to have positive rebirth in the future. So this small scope practitioner, that's their main focus, is this ethical discipline of abandoning the 10 non-virtues.
다시 늘 타와타 그러왔어. 타와타 이제 다 가르로 렘바시야. 내지 유도 내지 손노동 연애체 안에 렌데 손노동 렌데야 무슨 안에 타와타 들어가래서 내지 간에서 내지 유도 요체 안에 렌데 거 손노동나 안에 타와 렌데와 타타 타야타 이제 두스레서
So then we look at the medium scope practitioner, and since their intention is actually to gain liberation from samsara, they use the teachings on the Four Noble Truths. Through understanding the Four Noble Truths, they are able to gain this state of liberation, this freedom from samsara. Oh, sorry, and within the Four Noble Truths, primarily the study of this law of cause and effect.
Okay. 다 타와세는 논치노 타와 계지 시행도 왔어. 타와 타와세. 논치면은 출리 처음에 타와 계지 시행을 하러. 타와 시행을 하러. 얘는 논식을 타와세야 돼. 간에 타와세. 논지군이 나가요. 전부 전공으로 다 하는 거지. 다 단단한도 레도 레먹게와 레도 녀모. 로메와도. 다 대지도 돈도 노요체나 텔레톤을. 레도 녀모 on the dome again, then the top. On your mount, you must have it. Then a tower, and the tower said, the digital tower said,
So, Buddhism is not the only religion or philosophy that talks about this liberation, right? All different religions have their own kind of version of some sort of liberation, right? Well, not all, but many have their own forms of liberation. However, what is meant by this kind of liberation from Buddhist actually? What are you trying to get liberated from? Well, you're trying to attain freedom or liberation from karma and delusions, right? Because it's the karma and delusions that are the cause of all suffering and difficulties. So it's liberation from karma and delusions. So this is what we're trying to attain liberation or freedom from.
그래 단단 강조는데 롱문도 봐. 게 겐고레니 마토나레 근데 나니 마토나 나용데 신이 마토나 신도도. 가시에서는 안래면 니몬도 띵온도 도는 롱면하지 레그도. 어때 될 텐데 먹어 봐대 타와나 타와스도 레도 니몬도 도 먹게.
So we don't have our kind of like a wrong word. We don't have. It's like control of our situation. We don't have freedom or control of our situation, right? Because we don't have a choice. Sometimes we get sick. We don't have control over that. We have to be born. We get sick. We get old. We die. This is a situation that's not under control. But why is it? Why are these difficulties? Why is these problems coming about? Well, it's because of karma and delusions. And while we're under the sway of karma and delusions, we're not in control of our own situation. We don't have a freedom, right? Because we're constantly under the sway of these karma and delusions. So this is what we want to gain this freedom from. So, you know, Geshe was asking here, the other religions, like the Christian religions, they have their own kind of liberation, right? This freedom. But what are they actually looking to get free from? So this is a question for you guys. If you know. Maybe Russell's got the answer.
Hell, I imagine.
Well, I think they're looking for freedom from suffering in their own way.
Yeah.
Yeah, freedom from suffering, to find peace.
Yeah. So konza di dugnal gi tapa yure ro. Can you say na konza dugnal? Dugnal le tapa
Seguro. Real Paul this okay.
Probably.
I'm going to issue Garcia.
Konza yeshi di layo jo yure. Oh, okay. So
What?
He doesn't want me to answer. He better spit it out. So what's their kind of what's their freedom? What's their
Their
result?
freedom is their freedom of heaven is that they get whatever they want in heaven. Whatever their heart wishes, they can get. If they want to play the piano there, if they want to, whatever.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
konza di
They will find in heaven. It's a
heaven
dream.
leshigi layo. Ini layo dila kena, dini kariya ne dopayo dilib gire.
Only good
Kena kalak dopayo na kalak leb ro, kalak shimbo leb. Ini nikuna dini bed yamo leb ro. Kariya ne dopayo na dini di rangshin lib gire. Di layo di dena dini kariya ne dopayo na dilib gire.
Okay.
I think it's, I don't know because I'm not following the Christian faith, but it is very simply the same, because the fear which is generated, because there's a lot of fear, is to avoid the suffering of hell.
Yeah.
And the hell is the suffering to avoid when you die
Yeah.
and are reborn in heaven.
Yeah.
The difference is there seems to be still a very strong sense of self within that.
So konza di yure ro.
Yeah.
Di shinya dini kokab ni yure di madra ni nyawa ke.
Yes.
Ani nyawa dini di pe shigi do angan nyawa to. So
Yeah.
nyawa ma kena dini di layo la ke gugire.
Yes.
Kani layo ta nyawa ni.
Yeah.
So ne dini di pe nga shigi do na nyawa de mo dini di layo ke gugire ro. Dini di control cloud chubu na dini di nyamlen che ro.
Yes.
Yine di konza di taksin chenpo yore, di taksin nyempo yomare ro, kanyan takas ma pama dro ro.
Yes.
Yine di taksin tapchi che di nyempo yomare ro. Di la.
예, seguro. 근데 seguro. 오늘에는 이게 타와타는 사이요 지와라. 아니면 만화수 바치 제냐게 녀모도 뭐마 말이바. 녀모도 단적 제거로. 단적 던절 녀모 때문에 매와 제마타나 그 제때 돼야 되고. 아니 먼저 매모 자 장지 지야를 갈래 가와야 되는 거서 말어. 네. 근데 야라 타와타를 건설 라이치를 라로.
네네네.
라이치야 라와 양 말이세. 라이 이게 지야라 먼저 단다 뭔가 단적 말이바 바치 제거. Nyemo danzo mari bal nyembo ten mewa che gamasa. Ko nyembo mate nye ha sona a jete de ro. Ten ngando ige la wi che al kale khaw ya.
Ah, okay. So he said,
Kosong,
yeah,
reason.
yeah,
Okay.
He said, so he says that, yeah, this is like, fair enough they want to be born in this kind of heaven, right? But if you don't apply the antidote to this self-grasping, this Taksin, then it's quite difficult to actually be reborn in this place, because this creates tremendous obstacles for oneself, right? If you don't actually apply this antidote to the self-grasping, then it's very difficult to get this positive result of being born in like a heaven or a pure realm or something like that, right?
Manzo leka jiten leka kare chena leka jachomba lena leka te le ala pache kare ngon pache tondo pa mewa chena ane leka de le thoro o te no ji kro pa leka te le ala pache tondo mena ke chenye pache mena leka de tata le thoro pache yana le thoro mando jiten te no ji tawa ta ala ngenta na thama ta ala mba mari ba don danzir pa chero konzo nyembo tene mewa che garmasa konzo me sane mewa che mewa.
So like, just like if you want to achieve a result in worldly terms, you can't do it if you've got too many obstacles, right? First thing is, you have to remove all the obstacles before you can achieve any sort of result. And just in business or even like in worldly terms, right? If there's too many people creating or too many things that are in your way, too many obstacles, you won't be able to achieve the result. And so spiritual practice is very much the same. If you have obstacles, a lot of obstacles there, that are preventing you from being able to attain whatever result, being reborn in heaven or a pure realm or whatever, then if you don't make the effort to remove the obstacles, you will have great difficulty. It'll be very difficult to attain the result you're looking for. So it's very important to remove the obstacles.
Oh, those are Anthony, lots of this. Manzo sono don manzo tawa tawa jise no chino tawa tawa shung se meno ja yari tawa tawa so meno ja yari te meno ja jigo ke tawa tawa tayo tawa tawa la dage se no yi ke wa ane deji lo yong chen tawa tawa ke tawa tayo ma do wa che zang chi gare yin ko pa che je ro ko se ne manzo ko me sa ne ko me wa che me wa o du se no chi tang du se ngang.
Okay, so, you know, if you want to attain this result, like being born in pure realm, like saying prayers is good, but that alone, just by praying for something alone, is not that likely to actually get that result, right? It's not saying it doesn't help. You know, we do prayers for this thing, but that alone, just sitting around and then praying without actually removing the obstacles or changing one's behavior and creating other causes, it's not going to just, that alone is not very likely to bring about that result. So you need to look at what's preventing it, remove the obstacles and create the causes if one wants to attain the result.
danza sabe nyembo ten nyole chen tano mewa chen ani thosang la pashi tu sere se nya ta na.
So you know, it's if we want to achieve the result in Buddhism, then we need to do it through prayers, but also through engaging in the practices. So it's not like just one, we do both. The combination of both is very effective, but if you do the prayers without engaging in the practices, it's very difficult to get the result, right? So it's this combination of the two that becomes very powerful.
It's true. Yeah, I'm not doing Auckland. Auckland, the level show. Pension change, send a little mario. Auckland level show, say, Lao get it. Montan dog around, Ron Man on the leg mario. What do you know?
So if we want to like go to Auckland, if we just sit here and go, oh please Buddha, let me be in Auckland, I really want to be there, it'd be so awesome, it's got lots of cool stuff, Buddha, 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 it's not going to work, right? If we actually want to go to Auckland, we actually have to get in the car and drive there, right?
Yeah, okay.
So this is the kind of...
Okay.
I don't know that anybody actually prays like that, but if you do, you probably need some help.
다 단단히 간도 라게 가르라고 왔으나 간도 처마 타와 쇼 세는 메모자 정지 타고만 했어. 다 년에 제거랬어. 타와 가 데마지도 내지도 로종치 아니 먹겠지. 먹게와 렌데야 보소. 또 시안한테 다 그거 매사나한테 타는 거.
So, for example, if you want this liberation, then of course it's okay, it's good to make the prayer, to pray to the three jewels, that you may achieve this state of liberation. But as well as that, you have to study the Four Noble Truths, you have to understand the law of cause and effect, and you have to adjust your behavior, your actions in accordance with that knowledge. And then through that, combined with the prayers, then you actually can get some results that you're trying to achieve, right? But just the prayers alone without any of the other practices, then you're probably not going to get what you need.
또 다시 해보 중간도 린 라차라와. 다시 해보 중간도 린 타나 야보레서. 다 대체가면 생신 처마만 이까리 쳐보래. 나 생신 탐지 대화자 동아세 상지지 공부 타거든. 선로 시부 침비 선나. 다시 해보 침보라. 아니 정주 생세시체. 아니 파시투 녀네체. 아니 상지 공부 타가. 정주 생시체. 아니 파시투 녀네 제나 다 오늘 타와라나면 상지지 공부 다 텔레 건 타메르스 어때 드네 이상 안조 다는 위켄드 상지지 공부 타야 시는 중에도 린장 첨부 타야가 다시 두 년에 제가 다 내가 첨부 제가 와다 전도 세시 쇼가면 주보치 특별히 가야 벌려는
So, you know, if, for example, then we want to attain the state of enlightenment, full enlightenment, then one needs to do, obviously make the aspirational prayers, but on top of that one needs to have this refuge in bodhicitta. And then on top of that one needs to practice these 6 perfections, right? And then through that, combined with the prayers, one can have some hope of achieving the results. So that's the point of this weekend teaching, is on these 6 perfections. So, you know, that it's not a small or medium scope practice, it's actually a great scope practice leading to enlightenment. Could I have the text in English?
Yep.
No,
you can't.
What do you say?
Just roll with it.
What the means? 당한도 때 오늘 전에 파시투 년에 제거로 파시투 로요야 부치 내서는 돈나 되네 오늘 상지지 공부 그러면서는 탈라 탈 그러와 되네 인자 단데 내가 처음에 내가 정말 생각이 조지 생지보전 년년에 전에 보여야 돼.
So, you know, to engage in this practice, you know, these 6 perfections, it's not just about only attaining the ultimate state of enlightenment, but, you know, it will actually bring kind of happiness and joy to one's mind if one can engage in these practices.
Yes. 그치 봐요. 만나서 파티나 어떻게 노는들이 이제 danse야래 되네 칼라야 보야래 지보 체그러와. 지보 춘춘이다. 당한동네 때는데 상지 공부 타야가 매제 체그러. 데리던 한동 danse 자게mon게 지보배 체그러다.
So, you know, if we kind of go to a party and there's kind of like dancing and cool food and all this sort of stuff, right? Then we might think, oh, this is some sort of happiness, right? But in reality, this is just it's a very small type of happiness, you know? A real genuine type of happiness comes from these kind of practices and changing one's mind, right?
What do you say? 당한 정절 농치세야 돼 장로가 예나 농치 총거래 예라로. 다시 농치 농의 녀내진 시부친루 친송세야. 시부친루 친송 대노는 만데 상지 간주 자도 제야래. 또 참아 시부선은 만디와 이마가 요마스. 다 대청로서 라차라고 개체 모르겠어. 다 농치 쳐야돼 장로 예나 농치를 라차라고. 개체 모르 왔어. 대하 고거라. 다 농치 때 상지 간주 보다 자도 제송하래. 또 참아 추다나 시부선은 말해와 요마래. 어때 전로 지대 제차로 왔어. 다 농치 개체슈 따대나데 전로 지대 제차로다서.
So, you know, we talked about this practice of refuge, right, as being the cornerstone of being Buddhism. So this is the practice that is part of all of the three scopes have this practice of refuge, right? And so these are this is something that is common to all of the three scopes, is this practice of refuge. So this is kind of the root of, or the starting point of Buddhism, is this practice of refuge.
Understand. 다 도스르다 에 노치 간데도 차고 샹도 예 그건도 와. 노치 뇽래 챘네 토자 시에부선도 와.
네.
대하 고건. 시에부선 모데 레레 타를 지카르 저근도 땡년라 차로. 대래 강은 다 뇽래 챘야만 노치. 대내서 대하 건 아니 뇽래 챘네. 타 도스챘네. 내부던도 타 그러면서. 던도 내서 챘네 하면 원은 되네 대로와제 메노자 지와 차고 가세 챘나. 코 전제 야보된 거야 말이야. 다는 방금도 디세 tuntu지는 개첨부 시고 단어 찌제 자르다.
So it's very important to understand that what defines being a Buddhist or not a Buddhist, right? And that's practice of refuge. And then one needs to understand, what are these three types of Buddhists, the three scopes? So what is the result they're trying to achieve, and what are the practices that they go about in trying to achieve it, right? So you need to understand, what is the entry to Buddhism, and what are the three scopes, and what are the practices, and what are the results. Because if you understand this, then you can look about how to achieve that result. Just going around and praying for something without any understanding of how to achieve it isn't going to get you the result. So, we've kind of only spoken for a short time, but we've made a particularly important point here. It's very important to understand this.
방금도 소소 조보지 와지. 조보된 다 농마 많이 봐지. 소소 농치 제게 라로. 소소 농바인 라거도 왔어. 조보된 농마 말이와.
네.
아니 조보 저 농바인 메신 예세거도.
네.
다치 농바인인데 농배가 가르치는 농바치레세나. 장조에 라거와. 다음에 저때 농치 제는 가른두세나. 논에 제는 가른두세나. 쉬어서 년도동 타와도 년년도라 아래 델리선 타야나 다때 타야라 제제 타나 제카르 저근도 라선 아이 도노 센테니 샹데 시타송 델리스 세야메 도스 다세 라이거리스.
So, like, for example, if you have somebody's a Buddhist and they have a friend that is a non-Buddhist, and this friend might ask them, so you ask some questions, so he goes like, what makes you a Buddhist, right?
Yes,
and you go, this is practice of refuge. It's this trust and faith in the three jewels. That's what makes you Buddhist. He goes, you're cool. That's all good. So what are you guys up to? What are you trying to achieve? What do you kind of want to achieve as a Buddhist? So then you can say, well, there's the three scopes, I've got the three different types of Buddhists, and they want to achieve these different results. And they go, that's great. And then he goes, well, okay, that's cool. So what kind of practices, what causes or what practices do you do to create that? And then if you go,
I don't know.
then it's kind of like, you look a bit stupid.
Some people talking, Buddhist, why is me, Malayu? I'm trying to say, trying to Tandola can keep
So some people might go, why are you Buddhist? They go, well, because I got this cool mala. And look, I can move the beads and pray to the gods, so that makes me this awesome Buddhist. And they're like,
Mala saw animal disability.
yeah. So
But
if that was the case, you could give a mala to a wombat, and then that wombat would be a Buddhist wombat, which is not probably the case.
Nomba chawala jandodo tando gugunu wa. Ko pena nombe pawa amang kanga bewa yimbachi. Nomba yimbachi. Ko pogi che sona, pogi che sane pogi de nomba re amarda. Pogi de ya nensi shine. Jando che sona, nomba chawala. Pawa bewa che, bewa amani bele ya chi. Pogi che ne lo chu din. Pogi de nomba re la thaya yoma. Dusra da.
So, the other thing is they might say, well, what makes you Buddhist? Oh, well, because I'm born in a Buddhist family, like my parents are Buddhists. But this, again, is not the case, right? It's not like if you're Tibetan, and your parents are Tibetan and they're Buddhist, that you're a Buddhist, because you can't say that, well, the child's very young, 4 or 5 or something like that. You can't say they're Buddhist because they don't have any understanding of Buddhism or anything like that. So you can't therefore say, well, because their parents are Buddhist, they're Buddhist.
Ta pa wa nyanga yishi chi chi ne ji na po je ne lo chu de ko yishi ri sa la ya ma no ko yishi ki chi na chi ko ha ko me chi na mo ga yishi chi lo ri sen dan ro lo ri sa de chi pa ro ha ko ma yo.
So it's like, some people might say, oh, very young kids, oh, they're Christian, because they've been baptized or something like that, right? But in reality, if the child has no idea about what Christianity is or what the point of it is or anything like that, it's very, how can you say that they're actually Christian, right? If they don't have any understanding of Christianity, the path, the result, anything like that. It's very difficult, right? Because it's like, otherwise you could just say that like an animal could be a Christian, right? Even though, because, if you baptize them or whatever the ritual is, then any animal could become a Christian because they don't, because they don't need the understanding, basically. So this is,
Oh, those are that show there's pensa. Ne ta na ro wa. Ta ngan zo no ba yin se na da yu shu yi se na ka shi yin se na chi lu ka ri yin se ge na. Chi lu te do te yin ba la. Chi lu te go. No ba yin na yu shu yin ka shi. Yi te yi ka ri ne. Lang ka ri nyo ne che ji. De bu ka ri ta yan do. Ro wa. Yi do lang do de bu. Ten de ge chi lu rang rang yi do lang do de bu ka ta yan do. Ne se di shi so na. Te chi lu te do te yin se na. Ta na un do ga. Ro wa. Ngan no no ba yin se na no be yi de ba ni yi do lang do. Lang ka ri nyo ne che ji. De bu ka ri ta yan. Ten do ne se shi so na no ba se gra. Ani shi do ka shi la ta rong re se. Rang rang chi lu te do te yi do lang do. Lang nyo ne che ra wa ta yi den ra wa to. Mo ji ka ri. Lang ka ri nyo ne che. De bu ka ri ta yan do. Tonzo so ha ko na teni chi lu te do te nga te yes yin se na ne ya pon do ma. Teni chi ne ha mo nga chi lu yin shin ka shi yin no ba yin se na. That's can so mo de.
So, if you want to engage in any spiritual path, be it Buddhist, Christian, or whatever it may be, then you need to have an understanding of the three aspects, like the ground or the entry or the ground, the path and the result, right? So, for example, if you're like a Buddhist, then, you need to understand that the ground is the refuge, and then the path, depending on the three scopes, is the practice you engage in, and then the result is the result of those scopes. So if you have this understanding, then you can say, yes, you understand the path, or the religion, the philosophy. The same with Christianity. If you're just going to go around saying you're a Buddhist or a Christian without any understanding of these things, right, then, is it how much of a Christian or Buddhist or whatever are you really?
Ta ngan zo de pa shi tu ma xie wa xie ge zhe mong mo xie song se zhe zo. Ka xi ken ca wa de ge ya de ma xie wa xie mo ga mong mo xie ge de.
So, we're kind of like maybe not talking about the six relations, we're talking about a lot of other stuff, and you guys might start thinking that, oh, this is all a bit weird and wonderful and a bit strange.
Good.
De ta ngan zo ta ge chi lu ka ne je dong lang do le bi na ti shi ge la ro. Pe na do se ri ta chu no nge chi la ten la. Nang ba yin na je se ya de je te mo je den ba ni ku zu de den dong be na se te ha ko ji je de. An den re ba nang ta shi ni ta de she ra ni ta nang do lo ju che ga de ha. An de che ne re ba san ji ge de chi zu chi ge zu ge. Ni ta ya. De ni na se shi na ta na nang ba yin se na ta pi ta bo be chao ga se.
Lamdi Dimbashi.
Je den ba ni
Shi Dimbani Lamdi?
nang ta shi ni ta de she.
Tabshini Konda.
An re ba ge ni. A den ri nang ze nang chi che na ka de se. A mo ji je ten ge zo de ten dang be den ba re je te je. An ni lam ta shi ni ne chi an ni re chi ge zo ge ni ta du. Da nga de chi de che yin se na. De ne ko din se de wa pa de wa.
So looking at it from the Mahayana path aspect, we can say that the ground is the two truths, right? Understanding the ultimate and relative truth. And then the path is the practice of the method and the wisdom. And then the result is the two bodies or the four bodies of the Buddha.
Then
So
my body sent them ta din se ya. Very good. Okay.
So through understanding the two truths and then practicing the method and wisdom, then you achieve the result of the two bodies of the Buddha. Two or four, depends on your body.
pena. Yushi chi chege na. Yushi chi monji ji ka ji ten ka ji. Ko lang nyo len ka ri che. Anen tan rewa ka ri ta ni. De ha go ko do. Yushi chi.
Okay, so if you
Den go re ta no ma no ji te lang ro go nge ta na.
so the same for if you want to follow any path, like if you want to be a Christian, you need to understand, well, what is the ground for this path, right? And what are the practices that they engage in, and then what are the results of those practices? So, this is something that should be done for any kind of spiritual path or any path that you want to follow, right?
Te chi lu tsoma le ro. Ta chi lu tsoma le de. Je don lang don rewa ta ka te le gro. Yo re ves.
All of these traditions, they might not call it the ground, the path, and the result, but all of the traditions will have
Yes.
these three aspects in them, right? They might not call them that, but that will be there because that's how you go about achieving the result.
Is true?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Ta ngan de okay. Ta de no ro da.
We better whip into these six perfections.
Six perfection. Ta do xian ne. Ngan do. Ta na ngan do de xia de 대화 침미치 시에가 그래. 그러와. 지면 침미치 대화 침미치 되라. 녀네 제를 다 당연히 놈. 타시니 생바스. 타시니에나 상지 공부 타타가 라인바스. 타도 셔라니 때 다 파시 주는 레가. 파시 주는 도망가데 탑. 니제도 숑. 숑주세. 파시 주는 도망가데 탑. 주바 셔라 다음에 또 비셔라데 타르잖아. 아니. 셔라. 제상아 다시니 상제라 랑 다시니 거세로 상제 랑 다시니 때 파시 주는 레가 도망가데 탑데 주바디 셔라 다음에 또 셔라 다 코니 녀래잖아 상지 그 타체사리 다 센트글마.
So, looking at these six perfections, when we talked about the ground, the path, and the result, well, under which aspect did they fall, these six perfections? Well, they fall under the path, right? And how is it? Because they combine the method and wisdom. So when we talk about the six perfections, the first five of the six perfections would be considered the method aspect. And then the sixth one would be considered the wisdom aspect. So in this way, the six perfections contain both the method and wisdom aspects. So you guys know what the six perfections are?
I cheated.
Yes.
Yeah, Mancho. So if you don't kind of know what the six perfections are, the older people here, you should learn what they are. And if you do, well done. Oh, I think he's going to ask a few people. Okay, so do you guys, you two, you don't know what they are? Okay, so the six perfections are generosity, ethical discipline, patience, enthusiastic perseverance, concentration, and wisdom. Meditative concentration and wisdom.
Don't
worry if you don't understand.
Yes, no.
Slowly go through all of them.
No worry, in a Sony Coney on my Tate. Tate pass to the dosere. You so pass to the desitino do it. Ranji Gogotan. Ranji Mamba should be pass to Rang so sent the Yaboya and or pass to you. Yen Yabora doing it for years. Tin Goldman do get the pen, pass you to Goldman. That's your teaching it there, man. 세시에 때는 랑지 멈바 셰비 파시 투동 예지 멈바 셰비 드뱅이 보여세 내는 마마마데 시파레 네 코피테라 랑지 멈바 셰비 파시 투동 예지 멈바 셰비 드뱅이 보여세 녀네체 네 tombo 랑지 멈바 셰비 파시 투세 때는 파시 투디 깨차된 것들은 쭉
Apparently it's in here.
What are you looking for?
You see, it starts with to clear one's own obscurations, you practice the 6 perfections. And then something about to clear others' aspirations, I didn't quite
단단데 디시 하이 랑지 소소 야보레야 파시 투녀네체
Oh, here we go. How to train and so after developing bodhicitta, the way to train in the deeds of the children of victorious ones, right? It's on page 627. I will discuss the 2 heavings, how to train in the 6 perfections in order to ripen your own mind stream, and how to train in the 4 ways of gathering disciples
Yes,
in order
good
to
boy.
ripen the mind
Yes.
stream of others.
대하고 다때때 되는 안조 시야 때로 다때는 랑지 멈바시베 네 파시 투세 알이 소소야 보래야라 소소야 보래 파시 투녀네 체 소소야 보래 파시 투녀네 레소나 아니 옌로 바친 옌 더세 옌 로바치야가 아니 녀네 제가리스 어때 다때 잖아 때니 산지 끝다터야 레스 다는 거 데리다 데티치 다
So,
there's copy or which page?
so yeah, it's page 627, like the 3rd paragraph. That's under the heading after developing bodhicitta, the way to train the deeds of the children of the victorious ones. So the point here is the first thing you need to do is practice the 6 perfections in order to develop your own mind stream and achieve, your own kind of understanding and develop your own potential. And then after that, then there's ways of how to benefit others by how to kind of, get other people or to attract other people to actually kind of to be able to help them, to explain to them and help them to learn and develop themselves. So this is the 2 headings.
Okay. Tande soso ronji mamba shibe te inji soso ya poreala pashi tula lo yong che gu ma so melo ja zang yi re tong do a so te ha ko pashi tula lo yong che na tene soso ya pore te so rang ya pore so na ani jen ro pa che te gre se jen ro pa che tang de ye ya ta de ye ji mamba shi
So, it's translated here as in how to ripen your own mind streams, but Geshe says it's more like he says that it's how to clear away your own ignorance, right? So there's the practices, these first things, in order to clear your own ignorance away, you need to engage in this practice of the 6 perfections, right? And then after having done that, then there's 4 the nipadishiya.
yen mamba se yen mamba se shito ne na ya pore yen da ya po che ta shi je ya res ale ngen ron ya pore ne yen ya po che gra ron ya po ma ne yen ya po che ta ya ma ne
So first, it's important to clear away your own ignorance. And then, once you've done that, then there's like 4 techniques in order to help to clear away the ignorance for other people. But it's not much point in trying to, ripen one's other mind streams or clear the ignorance of others if you haven't cleared away your own ignorance. You're just kind of wasting your time.
tombo so ya pore gra wa ani yen lama zong ka me sun ya ran ma ta na yen de bi ne me zong ka bi ran ma ta na yen de bi me ne me se lama zong ka ale ngen so gu nyon le chen ya bo che ani man la gra ma so ya bo chi ne che ma ta na yen ya bo chi se na la na yong ma ri se
So yeah, as Sankara said, if I can't do something or try to achieve something for myself, how am I going to show others how to do it, or how do I have the power to help others to do it? And this is the point, is that if you want to help others to ripen their mind stream or clear out their ignorance or whatever, you first have to be able to do it yourself. And then you can show others how to do it. But if you can't do something yourself, there's no way you can teach somebody else to do it.
Okay. 다 소소 랑지 멈바 셰비 파시 투 녀네 체 긍도 소소 야 보래 다 바시 주년에 제자 되는 당보 임바데레사 당보 임바데.
So then we're going on to the first, the 6 perfections, and then the first one's generosity, so I think it's page 628.
그거
There.
다데 당보 당보 임바세 당보 임바 선택되와 대주 대다 이송 바시 주데 되는 데와 다데로 임바 선택되와 된디 소딘 샤라세 주데레스 다데 년에 체크 되는 데와
Okay, so the title 628, then the way to train in the deeds of children of the Vikshas is these 6 headings, the 6 perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, perseverance, concentration, and wisdom.
오케이 다 동보 임바데라 다 된서 동보 임바세야 돼 간로지 돼 임베 동보 임바세야 돼 누스르다 다 임세야 돼다 소소 레기 임바 동니야 다 린농시 자로 임바 동니야 지임바 근데 상마다 옌 동생데 린 임바 동니야 자로 사양 동야 임바 동니야 어때 동거도 상매가 다데 생예로 생예 어때라 임바세 그래서 임바세 동에서 맞다
Alright, so the
시동
first,
임뱅 어때 거서 된다
the first thing is to kind of understand what generosity is, right? So generosity is not just the act of giving material things, right? So that although that can be part of it, giving away wealth and possessions, that's not just generosity. Generosity is actually defined as a mental state. It's the mind that wishes to give. It's a mental thing. It's a mind that's a mental action of giving, the mind that wishes to give, right? That is the actual what generosity is.
generosity 임바 동생로
Yeah.
생테로 그래서 you generosity you understand
No, very clearly.
임바세리 다테 하고 그러 난데 마사에 내 임바 동사 pongo 되지 내 임바 동에 맞듯이 단데 잘라나 오이 사야면이지 되나 내 임바 렘바 버 랭에 되라 싶었던 내 임바 동에 되라 맞지 내 임바 말이 내 임바 말이 내 임베 제리 잘라 돼야 돼 임베 제리 다 임바 내오 말이 와 랭에데 말이 와 제데 말이 와 맞대 말이 그래서 임바 동에 지칭에 콜테기 동에 semba sen lot tel imba se kres imba ne de imba lenge de imba jenjig zedero de imba tonge matero da imba tonge mati ji on ne ko de tegi son ton sen te imba ne te cholo ares
So if we take the example here of active giving, so over here we have like a beggar, for example, somebody who's very poor, right? And then over here we have like a very funny looking person. And then we have some money or some food or something, right?
de zere
Yeah. So if this person gives this money to the beggar, then none of these things, we have the recipient of the generosity, we have the giver, and we have this, which we say is the substance, or the thing that's given. But if we say, is the beggar generosity? Well, no. And is the substance that's given the generosity? No. And is the person that gives, the giver, is that generosity? No. What is the generosity? It's actually in this person's mind stream. It's the wish to give. It's the mind wishing to give. That actually is what is defined as generosity or giving.
more people destructing that pesha na we tena ma jimba tong pesha te de jimba imba ngene chegdo de jimbe zer ma jimba mare mo la ndo nge jimba tang yin kare se ni ko jalo ite ye se jalo de jimba mare ko ji tong sen de
So, you know, some people might think that, this thing that you give, well, that's the actual giving itself, right? The act of giving, but it's not, right? People might think, oh, well, you know, I gave some stuff to some person at some point, so therefore that was the practice of generosity. But it may have been, you know, you may have given something, but that itself is not generosity. The generosity is the mind that wishes to give. That's what we actually define as generosity.
understand huh okay this data 다 학과 개체 뭐 학과 마송에 야 카도 라초를 천수다 가르스네 야 티슈도 야 보는지
So it's important to understand this. You've got to understand what generosity actually is if somebody asks you.
다 담보들 상식이 좀 봤어요. 상식이 좀 봤어요. 다 리동아야리. 리진바 동이야리. 린 배신야리. 리진바 동안데 요네 첨보래 잖아. 정주 선반나 어떤데 땅나 야고야 뭐 안도 레 동모 리진바 동 딜파요 말이스. 땅야 말이스.
So the first one is being generous with material things, right? So it's like, for those, it can be the act here that says what? This type of generosity arranges within a spoonful of barley flour to sacrificing one's body and one's life, right? So, it can be giving something very small right up to giving one's own body away. Now this kind of giving one's body away this is more advanced practice practiced by kind of quite realized beings. They actually have this capacity because their minds are, that they actually genuinely have the wish to give their body away, right? For us as beginners, we can't have this genuine mind wishing to give our body away because we're too attached to our body, right? But for advanced practitioners, they actually have this wish.
그렇지. 다 동 터그면은 소소 동안에는 동 터그면은 산난도나 근데 산난 동 다 임바동 냐말 시와 뭐뭐라 사래 살을 사 참마데 자지 리치 피포 텐디 지와 내뉴아래 임바마 동 인자 다 단단들이 제장아 근데 산난 동 다가 단다 동 이제는 동 영화 타발에 임바 동 그도 상 근데 산난 동나
So the obstacle to giving is this, what we call miserliness, right? So, like miserliness, this wish, this strong attachment to our wealth or possessions or whatever. Now, the way to apply an antidote to that is to think that, in the past, in previous lives, I've been reborn as like gods and, kings and so forth, have been in, had a lot of wealth before. But because at that time I didn't practice any generosity, now I've kind of lost that situation. I'm in this situation now where I'm kind of lacking things. So through this understanding, it's like one understands that if one wants to kind of have the situation of wealth and all of that, then one has to practice generosity now.
광고 나오는 강에 친도 나와 땅에 콜리지 마땅인가 그래요. 오늘 다 임바동 다른 거国家的 콜리 이지 임바동기. 다 임바동네 동아 대용. 그 임바동는 세는 민다와 야포타 그런 매 왔지. 네. 다른 디노란도 내도 너무나 맞다 봤어요. 임바동. 내도 너무나 맞다.
Oh yeah.
고성. 콜 미야버처라그리 녜짐바동야 나야버리세서 딘디 마임바 다만이 냐타바들 니네 콜 팬토아쇼 선아니 임바 다 잘라나 배셔나 가르제나 데 임바 송지기 임바 대차가레서.
So it's important that when you give, the motivation you have is not, even though we understand that because even though we might understand that through the practice of generosity we may attain wealth for ourselves, however, that should not be our motivation, right? That's not the ideal motivation. The actual motivation should be, ideally bodhicitta, but at least wishing to benefit the other person, right? You should be giving in order to benefit the person you're giving to. Not so much thinking, well, if I give this now, if I give $20 now, I'll get 100 million back in my future lives and be like, score, yeah.
Okay. 다 임바동아이나 요 체와피아이나 임바동아는 체와피에 가서 시동네 농진도 땅 땅아 가로지 제조에 매 야보리 임백세그리 손에 안 체와피아이나 마 임바동아이나 소소는 미 야보리 세그리 손에 안에 체와피아도 임바동한테 제지매를 스타트니 제나테 임바
So the other thing is we shouldn't give with the wish to kind of improve our reputation or our name or kind of, look cool in front of other people, right? It shouldn't, if one has this kind of motivation to achieve something for ourselves, either wealth in the future or to improve our kind of reputation as in the present time, then it doesn't become like pure or kind of correct generosity, right? Probably pure is the best translation. So it doesn't become pure generosity, it becomes kind of tainted with this impure motivation.
Tama jimba tong de wan chewa phe ar jin ro tong chi pa jimba tong chewa phe den che cha wa tong mo se no tong mo ka she tong mo jimba tang cha le nge tong che tong de sang ne den ji sang jimba tong mo tong cha le tong mo chi se shu yin de mo mo shi te jimba tong cha nge jimba de mo che cha mo chang de sang ji sang tenri sanji meres. Ani yang jimba tang ne tong sa le, nge jimba tong sa de non de katsun de jimba tang. Te re mo de jimba yin tang na ta ta yin so. Tenri che ji mes. Tong sa de ta so ma nang da che ge ma so. Nge katsun jimba de che ta de mong cha ye sa ri ta ni mo de so da. Ani jimba yin sa de del ma yin del xian xiang ta ta yin sang ji ro. Tenri che na ani jimba de ya po re ge ma se tenri ka no me ai ge se ti no na de. Ni te ko song yi. Yimba tong sa ra wa. Yimba tong mong chang de song. Goma jia zhen, goma ji tu de yue na, ka nga jia zhen ni ji tu ma zhen zhen na song song ye ra. Mong chang de song.
Okay, yeah.
Ani ya ale yimba tong sa de non du se. Yimba zha xi le ma zhe ji, ding lu zhen, da dang yin song na, teni yimba de ya po re ge ma, teni song ji me re se.
So there's a few things that can, I think Anton, it's probably not pure, it's probably genuine is the best translation, right? So there's a few things that can interfere with pure, genuine generosity, right? And the first one is, of course, having the mixed motivation, wanting something in return for yourself in the future, or getting some name or reputation. The other thing is that you shouldn't, if you give something away, like you give practice generosity, give a big offering away, you shouldn't generate pride. Like you shouldn't think, wow, I'm so awesome at this generosity thing. Yeah, I'm so good at it. That's probably not the best kind of motivation. And then also you shouldn't feel any regret if you give something away, thinking, I shouldn't have given that much away. Now I can't kind of do something I wanted to do with the money, right, or whatever you gave away. So these are kind of other things that can interfere. And also you should think, like, not having done something to be satisfied, you should also, be looking to help as many beings as possible, not to be kind of satisfied, I gave a bit away, so now my job's done, right?
Ta yimba kan de tong zi, tang bo tong yong de ne, yimba tong de, nge yimba tong san, ma de ne ge pen to a xiu, ya hu yong a xiu, san na, de yimba ta ta le ge, yimba sul tong ge na. Rồi, cả tông sai rồi nghe gì mà tông, coi là cái phim thôi ya bao nhiêu số nghe thì tông thì đến đó 있어. thế này còn ya bao nhiêu, thế này chuyện này ya bao nhiêu đấy sao?
So this kind of genuine generosity should be practiced with this kind of genuine wish to help the other person, and then this kind of intention that may my giving really benefit this other person, may they kind of bring them about happiness or alleviate their suffering and so forth. So with this genuine aspiration, that if it's purely focused on the benefit of the other person, this is what makes it genuine kind of generosity.
Understand. Ta yimba tiri zo tong, yimba ya po ya de wa, tong sa le, ka de tong na, nghe de mong cha ya, ka ta de mo de ma sa xie. Ta yimba tong sa de de ma zhe xi, de zhe ta ta yin sa ya wa, de ni ma sa xie. Cũng yimba de, ta ko do la ja zhe na, ji zhe na ro. Ta yin nghe ko yimba tong, ko na de pen to xiu. Sa na, ta de yimba ya po be, de ni sa ge le sa na yimba tong de.
Also you shouldn't be kind of thinking, if you give money away to somebody, then you think, oh, I shouldn't have given it to this person, maybe I shouldn't have given it, maybe I should have given it to that person instead, like another person instead. You shouldn't have any doubts in terms of the act of giving. You should really, when you give, you should really have this genuine wish to benefit the other person, right? And it shouldn't be tainted by any kind of thoughts for yourself or, things like that.
Okay. Yimba tong zel chen chu pena dollar jasa yimba tong man ji yimba tong dollar jasa tong sai de ma de ya bo che ma ha nge ko ka zu yimba tong ko ya bo mon ko ma tin yimba jin ten ta ta le so na ya bo me ta de le ko ma yimba jin dollar ji ma tong ma na ko ji tong dollar ji ta de de nga lu san na ma ko pen to wa shong so na 다 dollar ji de ni de pen tu che cha song ja de ni de ge san na shuo sa su ji jian na yin zang de non de zhan za song ni ji de ni de pen tu che song.
So it's important to understand here the amount that you give is not the main thing, right? The main thing is to do it in the right way. So if you, for example, give $100 to somebody, right, and then you go, later you sort of regret it and go, actually that person's a bit of a dick, so I shouldn't have given him like this $100. And then you kind of regret it, and therefore it's not like the pure act of generosity. But if you give like $1 to somebody, but you have this genuine wish that may this benefit this other person, right, and this genuine intention, then that actually is like this genuine practice of generosity. So this is kind of even more important than the amount you give, is to give in the right way.
Okay. 다때 선생이 임바 더 못했지. 다 임바 되는데 치지 좀 봐.
So then the second one is the generosity with the Dharma, or the act of giving Dharma. So the first one is giving of material things, and the second of there's three divisions of generosity. The second is being generous with the Dharma, or giving the Dharma.
치지 좀 봐야 돼. 파주 치년에 때랑 그런 치대 시그도 상년대 그런 야지. 다치 시년에 되고 콜 펜토아 상네. 다치 쇼로까지 치지만 좀 마시나요. 치지 좀 봐. 쳐. 거서. 네. 이제만 또 그런 라래도 파주 때 년대 야지. 소소라고 때 신대에는 다 몸복게 자요 말이. 치지
So it says here, this form of generosity could even be teaching a single four-line verse of Dharma to somebody who wishes to listen, if done with that person's benefit in mind. So, this it's not saying that you have to rant on for hours about, various different high-strung philosophical things, right? If the intention is right to really benefit the other person, then even just reciting or talking about one four-line verse or one kind of very sort of simple aspect of the Dharma, in order, if you genuinely have this wish to help the other person, then this can be the act of generosity of the Dharma.
다 짐바로 몽보야리 티노니 짐바노네 야슈티 치지 짐바데 아니 짐베노네 다 니노도 치지 짐바니 짐바젠네 다 쪼도 짐바데 에세 야슈레 에사.
So of the various different types of giving, this act of giving the Dharma is the best type of giving.
때 치지 짐바야 짐바데 야슈레 라는 거 야야 가르치는 야리스 좀더 뒤서는 갈라. 짐베노 치지 짐바데 온 동바 야야. So we
said that this giving of the Dharma is the best type of giving. So why? Why do you think that is?
Because it affects people's future lives, not just this lifetime.
Okay. Se deep pendokchi puchegi mare, se jama yang pendokchi.
네. 답변은 상제요. 칼로사니 사야면이 칼로 야고 있잖아. 펜도로 그 제구 자서. 다시 때문에 말이야. 고대고 줘야 돼. 치지 좀 맞다. 치대 파주디 년대나 세요. 년대 년지 치게 자시나. 그 요한로네 그 년에 제가 요한로.
So yeah, the reason that the practice of giving the Dharma is the best is because if you give somebody some material thing, then yes, it'll give them some benefit. Like if they're hungry and you give them food, then that will give them some temporary benefit. But if you give them the Dharma, if you teach them the Dharma, then it actually gives them the ability to change their mind and change their practice or their behavior. So therefore, it allows them to develop in a positive way and improve their situation in a more long-term way. So so also this kind of practice that we do, right? Recite. It's not just actually maybe teaching the Dharma to somebody else, but reciting the 7 limb prayers, studying, listening to the teachings. Then this is this can actually be done as a practice of giving of the Dharma. So, they have this kind of tradition in Tibetan Buddhism, it's called like shantung, where they go to people's houses and they do like a puja, or some prayers and some rituals and prayers, in order to help the person at this house, right? Now, Geshe says this can be done in one of 2 ways. If you do this with the intention to actually bring benefit to this being and actually to help this other person, then it becomes the act of giving the Dharma. But if you because when they go, then normally the person will offer them food and maybe some money as well, right? But if you go with the intention thinking, oh cool, I'm going to get a good feed and I might score some cash as well out of this, then that's, not really, that doesn't become the practice of generosity with the Dharma. But it could be something simple as well, like you can catch up with somebody for a cup of coffee, or something like that. And that time when you're talking, if you kind of are able to talk a little bit about the Dharma and, or try and help this person to understand their situation a little better, then this can actually be generosity of the Dharma as well, right? So if you're kind of meeting up with people, going to dinner or whatever, and you're able to kind of talk about these things, then this can actually be generosity with the Dharma also. So Russell's real good at this. He's often hanging out in coffee shops, talking about Dharma all the time. And so this is like his practice, is a good practice of him practicing generosity with the Dharma. So it's not, the point is here, it's not just like, you know, Geshe was sitting up, or a Lama, Geshe sitting up on a throne and talking about Dharma. This is not the only way to practice generosity with the Dharma.
Tu serete, ta shintone, ta chichi jimba no te, sanjik sunga, sanjik jimba, chichi jimba sendo was. Sanjik jimba to chimba, le tomo was on, Jedan, devo yaris. Chichi jimba de rayun song moncha, chena, yabo yaris, sanjik dollar, the sungaris.
So,
Shetone, Zimba Yone Chatante.
right, generally speaking though, you know, this kind of generosity with material things is more of a kind of easier practice for lay people to do, right? Because of their situation. And then the generosity with the Dharma is the more common practice for like monks and nuns and so forth, because they may not have much material possessions, but they're able to practice this generosity with the Dharma. So, you know, for beginners and kind of lay people, then it's you know, it's kind of more comfortable to practice generosity with material things, whereas monks and nuns have kind of this option to practice generosity with the Dharma more.
Sidon, Benara Yunda in, so Chichi Jimba, Ajong, Dika Sosoleana, Sanziki Jimba, Tom. Ani Chimba le Tomo in Ayon, Sanziki Jimba, Tom, Ajong, Ani Dika Soso Chichi Jimba, Tom. What that day, Nikachena, Yapu or rest, those in the patient.
So, you know, it's I just give me a sec, I'll just read what it says. So, you know, yeah, it says here that the main type of giving for monks and nuns is, you know, to give the Dharma, and for like people, lay people, especially beginners. In the beginning, it might be more kind of comfortable to give material things, and then as you practice and your understanding develops, then in future you can learn to practice more generosity with the Dharma.
Okay.
You can learn Tibetan and become a translator. And then give me a break.
Oh, the names are Numa page, Kadamba Song, page Kadamba Song, is then the cello. Don't pay my jet, the menu jets. And Kadama Song Casses. Near Chanoni, Yimbaton, Pen, yes, catch at the machines, Tombo, she mess. Yimba Maton, Sana Chene, and Yepa, say, Teshi, you are nothing. When they chat, or Sena change marriage, started their cockles.
So, you know, so I think this is deep Shiloka Dilo.
Yes.
Right. So the verse here, I'm not going to speak of benefit of giving things away, for I've already told you to draw back from grasping. This is what Kadamba Geshe
Sharawa.
Yeah. So, you know, it's the point here is what he's saying is that the main thing is the main point of this generosity is to remove this attitude of miserliness, to remove this grasping, right? And to generate this mind that wishes to give. So that's the main point of this whole practice of generosity, is the antidotes to these non-virtuous minds.
Jimbaton, Chewapia, the Sunyamono, Sena Yarva, Sena, Mazin Sena Yamono. Sena Chena Gario, Sena Chena Shayama, Yadolchen, Yadolchi, Yadolchia, the Sena Chen, Yadolchia. Jesang, then oh, Sena Chena, Yadolchi, say you're Tajibaton and Pen, Shigamas Kandomas. Then this Sena, oh, that did Kalchega, that Indian boy, Yimaton, Koronja.
So this generosity, what's this the antidote to? It's the antidote to this mind of miserliness, right? And what is the problem with the mind of miserliness? Well, other than the temporary suffering it causes you when you have this attitude, the actual result is that you can be reborn as a predator or a hungry ghost being, right? Where you experience many difficulties and suffering, right? So, you know, it's not like, this is what he's also saying, it's not, Geshe Sangey saying, he's not even going to bother talking about the benefits of giving, because it's the fact that it's an antidote to this miserliness is kind of awesome enough in itself, right?
That's on the Senate.
So does anybody have like a lot of kind of miserliness, or They're saying likes to hold on to a few things. Fair enough.
What happens is if you give someone something but they don't actually appreciate it, it's like, how do you not regret giving it to them if they don't treat it well or...
So Cassie me chalak tena ro. You know in concert the kibumundu concert the gupu yo mara ni chalak pa yo gani yapo ki mara dini kan dini ditena mi ditena dini kandes di gupu libdi mara ro kandes di jetsu iran je kansen concert di gagi mundu any di yaboche di chalak nyando yaboche gi mundu dini correct dini di gupu nyang rangshin dini ro adi yamundu ngate Kandesti Mayongi.
Taki pasena sosoge samananda chen, kon pen toa shu, san tongsen dagi jimbayan. Sosoge tongsen degi tongtsaro. Ma pachu degi peche kare tongmoto karang la pa. Deng anzo sende chiam.
So the point here again is to understand that the giving is the wish to benefit the other person. So if you genuinely give them something that you think will benefit them with the wish to help them, you know, then that's the act of giving, and that's the positive side, and that's what you should be rejoicing in. Whether they actually get any benefit from them, well, that's up to them as an individual, right? That's their responsibility, right? Like if you give a beggar something and they just go and spend it on, you know, drugs or whatever, then that's their responsibility, right? So it's for our side, we've done generosity in the correct way, and then we've had this wish to benefit them, so from that positive action is complete. So you should rejoice in that and not regret it because the action was done well and properly. The fact that the result may have not benefited them, that's their responsibility. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you wouldn't give them more money then if they came back to you the next day hungry.
Okay. Kasi di peshetena and mi peshetena and in concert di kalag nyogi mara arang nyogi. You know, dini di 구부책이 말에 젖술치나 간지 di 첨부 여보도 얘는 상연이야 peshet에 세력나 dini 양곁에 W만 지 여보면도 간지나.
다용 때는 콜 펜도 매와 하고 소나데 마동는 데가. 때는 마동는 데가.
So yeah, that's right. If you once you understand that it's not actually benefiting them to give them something, then it's okay not to give. It's not, you know, but if you first gave with this understanding, you thought you were benefiting them, and then later you realize it isn't. It's okay to not give them again, but that shouldn't mean you regret the first act of giving.
So that's not classed as being miserly if you don't give the second time they want it.
So Kesi mi dukcha chalag matene de sena mare?
Te mate sena mare. Shirali apo tar. Manova chero. Te sena se amer.
Right, so no, it's not miserliness because you've actually checked. You've used this kind of discriminating wisdom to actually check that it's not skillful, it's not beneficial to give, and then based on that you've decided not to give. So that's actually using your intelligence to make a correct, unmistaken decision. So this is not miserliness.
Tombo jimba jinde nganzo tangi la imba. Jimba jen tsade, ngede jimba montrande son yo meres. Ani jen tsade monte non do son meres. As jen tsade tsara. Ta jel te jen penton do mondo te ya so tagi tagi.
So yeah, it's like what we said, the first time you give with the right intention, with the wish to benefit the person, and so that's an unmistaken type of giving. If later you realize that this type of giving this person, this type of thing is not actually benefiting them, then you know you can understand that it's better not to give. But it doesn't mean that the first time you gave was mistaken because you had the intention and you believed it would benefit.
But it call yimba tong ki peche lopa tong do son tomo tong ni ku ma tong ni ro. De sena se ya ma ro. Sena che ma ro. Call tong pento me wa ha ko no. Sena se me de.
So yeah,
Sena se de ye yin so so le ye no mi tong na ma te ni nya de sena.
So yeah, it's important to understand the difference. This kind of if you have this understanding that by giving somebody something, it's not actually going to benefit them, and then not giving because of that, that's not miserliness, right? Miserliness is said when you have something that you think might help somebody else, but you just want to keep it for yourself, and for that reason you don't want to give. then that's said to be mindfulness. But not like giving somebody something that you know won't benefit them or will even harm them. You know, like, you know, giving a 5-year-old a chainsaw is probably not that skillful, right? So that kind of generosity is different to mindfulness. Like not giving skillfully is different to mindfulness.
Okay, 다 임바 니인테로 상진도 치임. 다 임바 선바들 인 민지 샤지 임바스.
Okay, so then the third type of giving is the giving fearlessness.
민지 샤지 임바. 아,
Did you ever shoot your
임바 상이 지시.
okay.
그런데서 아, 임바 제조하는 데 상 조자 상로 봐.
네.
다 민지 샤지 임바세. 아. 다 먼저 다시 가신 번 나오더니 시도 제도는 그 손에 야 샤로 봐. 이 맞춰. 샤지 임바세.
So this one is giving others fearless. Yeah, often it's translated as giving others protection from fear. So yeah, this can be something like rescuing insects. You know, if an insect's in trouble drowning or something, and you give it, that's this type of generosity, right?
다 내는 이렇게 민지비 샤지 임바자데 배 내가 하고요. 또 되고 먼저 저거 기초자는 배는 번하고 있는데 처음에 시도 지금 나빠고 기초자가 장 이거 샤지 임바데 네 갈래 처음은 있을 간지 제나야 본도
This is a very good type of giving, and it's also quite easy to practice. Like if you see an insect is in trouble and it's drowning, or you know, it's quite easy just to scoop it up with your hand, take it out of the water. There's many opportunities. It's not exactly something that's particularly difficult or challenging to do. So it's a very good type of generosity to practice because it's quite easy to do.
배나 놓으시래. 배나 뭐지요? 그 청나고 있던. 세전하고 제거는 대강 저거 다시 전. 맞대. 세마전은 샤지 좀 봐. 레그려데. 내 문제 샤지 좀 봐래. 이나요 가시. 그 전공나 원자나. ben zenba zenkong nong zen no na gangen nong ma ta wa qian na deo minji bi xia ji xia ji ban zhou de re de yong yong ta xi jie ge le ma to mo de zenkong nong le zen gangen du so na ma dan yong na mo de zenkong nong le ma yong ne na ge du jiao mo bo jie ge de na de le yang ko de jie ji me de yong ki du jiao mo bo jie le de xia ya bo da go de sa.
So, you know, this type of generosity might be helping people out with difficult situations that they're in, right? But, you know, one has to be quite skillful with this. For example, if somebody's incarcerated in prison, right? This type of generosity might be helping that other person to get out of prison. But with this, you've got to be very careful, right? Because if you kind of get them out of the prison, right? But you've got to be skillful, because if you take them out of the prison and then they're just going to continue committing crimes and harming other person or doing bad actions, then it may be better for themselves and others to actually be in this situation, because at least then they're limited in the harm they can do to others. So it's important with this that it's good to practice this type of generosity, but it has to be done skillfully. You need to use this kind of intelligence or discriminating wisdom to see the best way to kind of go about, you know, whether it's best to actually help this person or whether they're better off, you know, protecting everybody else from their behavior.
대체다 완전 대체다 다른 거니 파시 두는 임바 시에 왔어. 임바세야 돼 동생 대 임바이나 왔어. 임바 때라 선도 왔어. 상지 잘어때야도 치기 임바 아니 샤지 임바 상디 배신 근데 다 임바 몸바에 做대상치 아니 가시 임바 제정도 될 상배 임바 상보선 뭐 야 내가도 된대 대신 되려야 다 다시 임바 참만 단다 상태 논래 되냐고 얘기했어. 대대게 시에서.
So, you know, I'll actually ask Geshe about this, because there's often divided into 4 types of giving as well. So these 3 are the primary types of giving. The 4th type of giving can be the giving of love. Right, but he says these are the main divisions, and yes, you can either have a separate 4th type of giving for the giving of love, but the giving of love is actually in implicit in all the other types of giving, right? So it's combined in all of them. If you're giving the material things, this can be done with, it's also part of it is to give you love. So it's not that it needs to be a separate division for this.
tāna yinpa yin sōsōla sēnā mēwā tsaṁjīga, sēnā mēyēwā tsaṁjīga, tē yinpa rē lāga mā rē sēndē nōndu, kwa sōng, tē nyērōng lāwa yā rē sē. Sēnā mēyēwā tsaṁjīga, yinpa sēga mā rē sē. tāna yinpa sē tōngsēn tēgā chē, āni yinpa yinjē sē, yinpa yinpē pēng sōng, yinpa mā yā na, nyēpa, sēnā yinpa. Yinpē pēng du nyēmē sōng nē, tānda tē chō tēnē mā ndu, tā mōnjī wī shā jī yinpa sāng dō, tē wō tē. 다cho te toma yuna te nge sene de lo yong ka ton ni ba si zon ne jimbe pa sha lan ju ba to ka de do wa bo ne xin ju ne ju ga ta de de sene de sta nge ta ne se yo de sa re.
So it said here that this kind of the point of this generosity is to remove this miserliness, right? To generate this thought of wishing to give. So it's important to understand that this is the main point. This is the main benefit and power of this act of giving, is to kind of be an antidote to the miserliness and increase, this wishing to give, this familiarity. So that's the main purpose or point of it. That's the power of it, right?
어때서 임바동네 임바동나 펜가스 첨보해와 하고 임바 마동네 세나시나 예바야와 난자 하고네 임바야나 아니 임바 비도 뭐 저거 하면서 다 세나 매와 던지고 임바 저거 말이 뭐 가시 가주마이 제 세나셔야만 거 임바세야 제야만다.
So the point of this is to actually apply this antidote, remove this attachment, this miserliness from use it as an antidote to that. So this is done through this actual practice of generosity. Again, just saying this prayer is, that I wish to be free from this miserliness or this grasping is not going to happen in this way, right? One has to actually do this practice of generosity, right? And through that, this becomes the antidote to the miserliness.
아니 용 임바 대타되는 다네 임바 똥 마터나 손노 돈하 다네 다나가 때진데 때 오포 뭔가도 임바 때 마동나 당연히 세나지 냐되나 때 소소 신노래인데 잘라도가 공마야 보이나 그야만도 단에 소소 리디오카 다데 다 소소래 뭐 강했던 거 임바나고 똥이야나 때 야쇼래 마도 때 임마마동가 세나지 쇼 야 냐되나 때 쇼에 대해서 그야만도 다 같이 하고
So, one needs to kind of think, if one has problems with this kind of attachment, then one needs to actually think clearly that, if one has this problem, with miserliness, one needs to think clearly that, having all this stuff is not going to help me when I die. If I have a cool car and a nice house and all of this stuff, well, when I die, it's not going to be of any benefit to me. But if I am able to practice this generosity, this is going to help me not only now, but in the future as well. So, it's this kind of thinking, it's changing our understanding of, things like this. This is what helps us to actually have this practice of generosity, or this intention to give.
Okay. 다 가신세나 잡았더니 얘래 바람 좀 첨보. 이제 benjo 첨보 야래. 못다 가로 뭐 동바 베티 첨보 되네. 다 임바치는 동 소소 버글라 제가 세나지 냐데로 다 니마지 시거로 시토체네 다 소소 게 자라 뭐라데 때까지 지 약킨도 세나 뭐 제대로 셔셔 차동신 되는 마음에 소리 시야고 정도 소소 자라데 다 냐라 시제 정도 소소.
So this can be a problem if somebody has this kind of miserly attitude that tries to kind of really grasping at one's wealth and so forth. And then in the time of death, this can be a real problem, because if this mind, if one's dying, one's thinking about, what am I going to do with all my stuff, and how am I going to hold on to this? Then if this attitude comes at the time of death, then this can cause one to be born in the lower realms. So, you know, this is kind of, having this miserliness can be very dangerous at the time of death if one really kind of has this mind coming up then.
Tene era ma tsong kashi pa ma kashi era wa. Pa ma kashi era ne. Soso pugu do. Ma yema kange kashi era. Ma yema ma soso pugu la kange era. Ro pa shira che mo do pa ma kashi. Pa ma yema la do a chung chung. Teme soso pugu do nyen chen la. Ro pa ma che san na che de. Ta se no don nga she so na kang ta gri sa che ro. Te de ta ga ma ko ka me wa. 아니 그야 매로 어때 그 코치 손은 넣어 얘들 로바치에 그러마도 나시 손은 그런 타그를 사하지 대도 타그를 갖고 시대 그야 매 왔대.
So, you know, you see some kind of parents, right, who even though their children might be in difficulty, they still, and they have some ability, some wealth or whatever to help them, they still don't, out of miserliness, they still don't give, right? Like giving out of school, not giving out of skillful means we talked before is different, right? But not giving out of miserliness and thinking, oh, well, when I die, I can give it to them then that's like, you know, at the time when they need it, if you don't give it, even if you have, and you have the ability to give, then that's really a problem. Like, it's best to give to other people, like giving to strangers or other people, you know, it's the better type of generosity, but at least if your own children are having difficulty and you have the ability to help them and you don't give, then that's, you know, that's kind of out of miserliness can be a real problem.
Understand. One story, yeah. I don't see here, okay. Two people. Bell. Many years. When you drop it. When you drop it, Tanya was. They'll come as I am on board. Call Bongos. Drop it, send on your yard, Jan Yondon to Yondon Dogger. You know, Saya anything, they'll Bishop Tegel. Korang nga drop it, Jechambor Tegri, song of it, the Tegel. Then you might have done the nanny. Shitocha. They drop out the lever. Calling your mamma tongue. That was Shitocha. Then this Tanga. Na ne do cho na so ta sanyo ni shisari es to bosa and this te ta ne na che mes ta chonal besho mombo ya wa chonal nyondo kuso as chonal besho do nyondo kno na ya bo ya res ki ko ta mande be ke chi ga no te ni she ga res.
So we have one story like from Tibet where these two people who are kind of like close friends, you know, they're always hanging out together, but one is quite wealthy, right, and the other one's kind of like